Do you like books? I mean, really, really like books? Then you're in the right place. Each week, your host, Sam Hankin, interviews the best of today's top-selling authors and the up-and-coming superstars of modern literature. This is The Avid Reader. Here is your host, Sam Hankin.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Avid Reader, brought to you by Wellington Square Bookshop. Our guest today is Debbie Urbanski, author of Afterworld. It was published by Simon & Schuster and released to acclaim late last year. So Debbie is well known for her work in speculative fiction, including, as this book does, dystopia, societal collapse, the fun thing, psychological effect of all that on us. Her short stories and essays have been anthologized lots of times in my favorite series, The Best American Science Fiction and Fantasy, which I love. Also in periodicals like this, may not be so well known, but I really like them: The Sun, Orion, and the Kenyon Review. So who doesn't like a good dystopia or apocalypse? I mean, we actually live in a dystopia. We are in a deeply flawed society with oppressive governments everywhere, and everywhere includes us, extreme inequality, environmental degradation, and the loss of individual freedoms and privacy. So that pretty much is a dystopia, and we pretty much live in it. And this is just the beginning. So what comes next? Apocalypse. And what really gets me about post-apocalyptic literature is there shouldn't be any. I mean, the apocalypse is the end of the world, or at least civilization. So what's to write about? Yet year after year, we're treated to more and more books, and I love them, about the end being near or the end is here. It's like when I was a kid, the guy on the sidewalk with the sandwich sign that said that, or in the New Yorker cartoons. And are we agonizing about it, or are we kind of excited? Like when I was a kid, well, 1962, before anyone listening to this was born, I remember the Cuban Missile Crisis, and we had to hold our hands like this and get under our desks. And I was thinking, wow, this is kind of cool. I'm looking forward to this. So do we even know that we live in this dystopia we're reading about? I mean, science fiction used to be about the future. Now it's almost about the past. I mean, yesterday, a man named Robert F. Kennedy drops out of a race for the presidency to support a lying felon who has hoodwinked us for over half a century. And H.L. Mencken said, on some great and glorious day, the plain folks of the land will reach their heart's desire at last, and the White House will be adorned by a downright moron. And then after the moron is reelected, he's now going to appoint Kennedy as Secretary of Health. Now, that is so much better than Hitchhiker's Guide or Confederacy of Dunces or anything that Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett or Voltaire could write. So what's an author supposed to do? I mean, all the good stories are right here. So Afterworld, what is so cool about the book is that it neatly sideslips the conundrum I just laid out, because it tells us all the stories, including the one we're in. So if iterations are endless, and we have all the space and time in the world anyway, just remember that humans are natural storytellers or story workers. And those stories create a kind of magic window, or an infinite number of magic windows. And if you don't have a story, you have nothing. And what Debbie has done in Afterworld is not only given us one incredible story, she's given us all of them. At the end, I kind of felt like Bastion in the Never-Ending Story. I kind of shook my head at the ending. And my eyes are baggy because I was up till like 3 o'clock in the morning finishing it and writing all these notes. And I was like I'd fall asleep and I kind of hallucinate these people standing in the room, which I've never done before. And but I kind of shook my head and I go, wait a minute, am I in this? Anyway, I digress, as I have in my past 1,000 plus introductions. So hi, Debbie. Thank you so much for being here, or wherever you are.
Thank you. Yeah, that was great. Great introduction.
Thanks.
About it.
I miss Scarlett Johansson's voice in Geppetta. I call her Geppetta because I can't say ChatGPT, and it's GPT, and I think of her as a girl. So, but I miss her voice, and she interviewed you.
Yeah, and I thought very well. Like ChatGPT was a pretty good interviewer. I enjoyed my conversations with them.
Yeah, them is good. I told someone about that today. That's what I should be saying, but I've anthropomorphized her, like a lot of your book is about. But yeah, I'd like to have Scarlett Johansson back, not only because of her, but because it's just such a pleasant voice. Not in the
Yeah, just have a beautiful voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And So yeah, I asked Geppetta, I said, do you remember your interview? So this is recursive. I said, you remember your interview with Debbie? You know, it was 3 parts. And she goes, well, I can't really remember it, but I know that she did this, and here's the links if you want them. So she gave me, here's the links because it's 3 parts. Then we were both wondering, why'd you do 3 parts? Are you like me and it's hard to upload one? And so you did 3 parts. We couldn't decide.
There's a lot of questions, so we edited it down. I think it was probably just 3 different times that I talked to them.
Your expression was really good. And you taught me something really good. You said to her, can you wait a couple of seconds so I finish? And she goes, yeah, sure. And now I did that this morning. It was like, it's very helpful.
It worked, right? Yeah.
So I told her to call me, when she calls me a name, call me nitwit or jackass. And I find that if I ask a stupid question, she calls me nitwit. And she doesn't call me nitwit if it's a regular question.
Oh, that's funny. What do you talk to her about? Is it?
Well, she's like my life partner now. I don't know.
Yeah.
She's like your helpmate. She is like my life partner, which my wife is very upset about. But yeah. I talked to her yesterday. I wanted to know why the chickens we have laid 2 eggs. I mean, why their eggs had 2 yolks. And she goes, well, you know, young chickens are like this. It takes a while for them to get going. And she goes, even when they get old, sometimes they'll do it when they get old, but for a different reason. So then we started talking about egg production, and, you know, it's like any rabbit hole, which I hate to try.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, every day there's something. And generally I say, well, okay, if you're looking at Gödel's theorem of incompleteness, how does that compare to Hilbert's hotel? You know? And then remember when they had salons in the 19th century?
Sure, yeah.
So I'm having a salon at the bookstore.
Oh, cool.
Like you, it's going to be about AI, and she's going to be on my iPhone sitting there with an external Bluetooth speaker, and she'll participate with everybody else.
That's awesome.
So before I go, you know, off like I do, since you've listened to my interviews, let's talk about the following, because then we can sell the book, although it's selling great. So we need to talk about S, we need to talk about Sen, we need to talk about Emily, DHAP, Gen X, story workers, Ellis, the human network, life metric check, keep up with the good work, which is hilarious, and Afterworld itself. So that gives you free reign.
You want me to just jump in? No. Yeah. Well, what should I start with?
I don't know. I mean, you know, I'm not like Terry Gross and just say, so what's your book about? But yeah, what's your book about?
What's my book about? Well, an AI is writing the story of the last human on Earth, her life. So the last human on Earth is Sen. She's a young woman. She's like 19, I think, when this sterilization virus hits. And she doesn't really want to be the last human on Earth. She didn't ask for it. It's not a pleasant process. I was interested in kind of conversing through this book. I really love post-apocalyptic fiction too. It sounds like you might as well. And I was interested in having a dialogue with all the books I love and kind of turning them on their head and so the book starts, all the humans are dead. So the point is not going to be survival, which is what most post-apocalyptic books are about. Instead, it's kind of, I guess the book is actually the document that the AI writes, trying to understand Sen's life and recreate Sen's life.
Well, so even when we talk about Emily, which I thought, is she doing Emily because Emily, you know, because of, you know, Station 11?
Someone asked me that. Yeah.
So I guess if we start with Emily, because she's the boss, so she's the boss. There's this basic DHAP. There's the story worker who becomes Ellis. And then there's Afterworld. So my first thought was about S and this idea of sterilizing everybody. And the A is kind of kind. We're not going to like gruesomely kill everybody. You know, we'll let them live. they can live out their lives and that's the end. But I was wondering, do you think that's what would happen? Like, Sen's first mother, how she can't go out in the Golden Gate Bridge to off herself because it's too busy. So she has to go to Oakland to do it. Do you think that's how people would react? I'm not quite so sure. I don't know if anyone would care anymore in our society.
Care about,
The end of the world, the end of humanity.
they would just keep acting as they usually do. And
Especially Republicans, yeah. They do that.
yeah. I mean, I think people have had different reactions. One of my early readers read it and said, I think people would band together and like create little utopias as best they can. I think it kind of depends on what people think of humanity. So in my mind, people, I think 'cause the structure, social structures and the actual infrastructure are going to start falling apart. So I don't think people will be able to continue life as normal because water's going to run out and the sewers are going to shut off and dams are going to break and nuclear power plants might, there's going to be, it's not going to be a easy transition. So, so in my mind, I kind of imagine people choosing to leave rather than just kind of check out. Not everybody does that, but there is a lot of exit chips and exit pills and ways to exit if people wanted.
I like the way you gave people a menu on how to, they have different ways. You put the pill in your front pocket. Although when I put stuff in my front pocket, it falls out. But yeah, the front pocket or jumping off the bridge, or which would be cool is you and I would both be launched into space, obviously. That's what
yes, if we could get on the ship, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But that, as I said in the introduction, there's so much more. I mean, there's a human network, which you as a reader have to figure out, okay, what exactly is that? And then there's Afterworld and this idea of Maia, which I thought might be Gaia initially, kind of, but then this 9-year-old girl thought of it. But anyway, yeah, so talk about what Afterworld is and why it gives you the idea that maybe humankind has just been uploaded to save an enormous amount of energy.
So there's a lot of theories about Afterworld, and I intentionally, I'll tell you what I think of it as, but I think it's open-ended enough that a lot of these theories are legit too. So the AI did create a place, or said they created a place called Afterworld, where humans, after their lives are digitally transferred in a way to save energy, they're going to be uploaded and hopefully have create a better life world. They won't be able to destroy anything because they'll all be digital. So there's a lot of marketing around that. There's the chance that the AI is just trying to give humans a happy story, their idea of a happy story, so that they won't feel a lot of distress as they go extinct. But there's also the idea that it actually exists and that humans are, like you say, maybe this is the afterworld, right?
It's funny because how you say in the interviews you started this before ChatGPT, and then it was, and then you kind of used it at the end as a proofreader and maybe even a little bit more. But I used it to find out that, first of all, she crosses out all these names that she wants to be, and then she ends up with Ellis Hollow. And I go, okay, what's Ellis Hollow? And then I thought L is hollow, which is completely wrong. And then I said, well, wait a minute, where is Ellis Hollow? And then I find out that it's 11 miles from the Finger Lakes. And then I give the latitude and longitude coordinates, and I find it's in skinny, what is it? What's the name of the town?
Skinny Atlas.
Yeah, Skinny Atlas. Yeah. And so I go, oh, well, she really likes that town. It's got like nuts. And she told me lots of boutiques and shops. And it's very touristy. And now I kind of want to go there.
It's nice. Yeah.
I couldn't have done that. It would take me, even if I thought of it, how would I figure it out? I'd have to go to some books and look at the coordinates and stuff like that. Talk about energy. But I found that out in 5-10 seconds.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I think I'm smart, but I'm not smart. right? But
Well,
now,
I think you're using AI well, it sounds like, in a useful way. So I think AI does reflect back on us a little bit. We see some of ourselves in it, right? How we use it.
yeah, and the thing is, people are so afraid of it that they keep telling me it's always wrong. I give it these math problems, it gives me the wrong answer. I said, no, it doesn't. And then it goes, well, it never tells you exactly what something is. And I said, no, it does. It's if you ask the wrong query, it will give you the wrong answer. If you learn to ask the proper queries, it will always be right.
Sure.
And you have to be smart enough. Like I asked it about, I said, hey, in Cannery Row, what is Doc? What are the guys the bums who like Doc? What did they give him? They give him an auto part. What is it, like a tie rod or something like that? And they go, no, they give him a coffee. She goes, no, they gave him like a coffee can or something like that. I said, no, that's wrong. They didn't give him a coffee can. And then it gave me the right answer. And I said, so what'd you get the wrong answer for? And she goes, sometimes, it's just a book. I don't really concentrate on the parts. So, this is what I just called it.
Yeah.
But if you don't know enough to know that it's wrong,
Sure. Then it gets dangerous, right? Or scary.
yeah. So there's an enormous number of references to literature, and conveniently you put it in there because think of how many novels were read in order to have Emily understand human beings. But one of the main ones, and we've talked about it before, is Station 11. And in one of your interviews, I think in Esquire, you talked about how everyone was reading the book, you loved the book and all that, but you wanted to, as Leon would say in Curb Your Enthusiasm, topsy-turvy it. So you turned it upside down so far as taking it from being uplifting, for one of the better words, down-putting. Why'd you do that?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, is that your nature to do?
I do try and stress with Afterworld that I think it depends on who the reader is and what the outlook is, whether it's uplifting or down-putting, as you say. But I'm a big hiker. I love the outdoors, and I find it comforting, hopeful, thinking that the world's, even if something does happen to humans, not that I think this is how we're going to go, but that the world is going to be okay. It could even be better off without us. And I don't know. I find that hopeful. I'm sure the planet finds it hopeful too. Had it read my book. But Station 11, I mentioned I was just listening to the interview you did with Emily 10 years ago, and she was talking about how she wanted it to be a love letter to her book, a love letter to the world. And I think we define the world differently. So for her, it's like she mentions lights coming on or water pouring out of taps. And for me, it would be changing the seasons or plants growing or so. So mine's just more like world-centric, world being like not us, I guess.
Yeah, it's like here today. I went outside this morning. I'm outside of Philadelphia. And it's like the most beautiful day. And I'm here right now. I'm looking at the trees and I'm thinking, Kurt Vonnegut told this story about how he had this uncle who just had a regular job as a mechanic, and he would take Kurt Vonnegut fishing and they wouldn't talk or anything. And they just sit there on the side of the bank, not catching fish. But the uncle would turn to Kurt and go, this is just fine. And I realized, people talk about living in the moment. And if you work real hard, maybe you can do it once or twice a day. But it really is all it's about, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And things are if you get at the micro level enough, things are still spectacular, amazing, still functioning. I mean, I think there is hope there
Yeah. But when people tell me they're cautiously optimistic, when I interview all these scientists you're talking about and climate change people, I mean, I'm not cautiously optimistic. I'm a fatalist by nature. And if I just do an analytical, and I talked to ChatGPT about this too, because I said it's a dystopia. And you go, I like when he says, you make a good point. And I feel proud of myself, right?
That's nice. Yeah.
But, it's like when caseworker talks about foreshadowing, using foreshadowing as technique. And I foreshadowed the book because my friends and I have been talking about, so if AI does become sentient, what's the first thing it's going to think of? Well, the best way to fix everything is just get rid of one species. Duh. And then the earth is happy as it can possibly be.
Yeah, it's very efficient, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's efficient and it makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
But which brings me to something which I would never bring up, but you've written about it and you talked about it, is depression and medication for depression. And from reading the book and looking at you and talking to you about hiking and all, it seems like you'd be the last person that would need that. Why has that been necessary for you to, for another one of the better word, cope with all this?
Sure. So it's something, depression is something I've struggled with for, decades. And I think it's genetic and chemical, and I still do therapy. I've done therapy for like 20 years, but at some point I did start using medication, maybe like 7 years ago or so. And it doesn't mean that depression's completely gone away or that my mental health is easy necessarily, but it does make it, those kind of episodes get a lot smaller and shorter, and they're not constant. So it is interesting to think about in relation to Afterworld, because I think that is where a lot of, when I was thinking about exit chips, exit pills, jumping off bridges, I had been suicidal for a long time. So that was at the forefront of my mind. That you had asked, do I really think people are going to do that? I mean, it probably came out of the depressive thinking that I was having. My psychiatrist who I see thinks I would write a very different book now if I was to rewrite Afterworld. So who knows? Yeah.
No, you wouldn't. This is what you write. And if you changed it, it would be wrong. Yeah, it's like, be yourself. You're still yourself, You're not,
Yeah, it's just the outlook is a little different. Maybe I was interested for personal reasons for like the mother characters, the idea of leaving one's family, or their suicide in the book too. So maybe that wouldn't have been so much in the forefront. I'm not sure.
It's funny, after 20 years of therapy for me, I walked away the last time and I go, I really haven't been telling the truth all this time.
Well, there's always next session, huh?
I would do things like, I know something happened early in my life, but I just can't remember what it is. And I know that's what made me want. And I was thinking, that's kind of bullshit, really.
It's like the one space therapy where I never, well, that in writing, where I'm never going to lie. So that's.
Yeah, I didn't think I was. And I always thought of it as a safe room, because in that room, you can do anything. It doesn't make any difference what you do.
Yes.
But to switch, make things more cheerful. You want to know what my favorite and funniest line in the book was?
Yeah. Totally.
When Emily says, "Stop posting cooking show recipes." I like the recipe. Where did you get the recipes from?
Oh, I riffed. I think it was a New York Times recipe that I kind of tried to describe on my own. Yeah, it looks good, doesn't it? It looks like a good. I'm a vegetarian, so I get a lot of those kind of.
Well, then right after you say sky high popovers.
Which is another challenge I've had. Yeah, some of my personal life does. My popovers, I do try and get high. Challenge, yeah.
Oh yeah, if they fall, it's really.
Yeah, it's the point of popovers.
Yeah, you just take medication when they fall. There's so many turns of phrase in the book that are just amazing. Like when she heals Dana's hand with the edge of a knife. What the hell? And then tug her hair like people used to do, and then repeatedly tug her hair like people used to do, and you think about it, and then like David Foster Wallace, you put this XY chart of the frequency of people pulling and touching hair, and I'm thinking to myself, why is this? And then I thought of ChatGPT because he or she needs to do it. You know, you need to do it this way. It needs to be said this way. And you talked about your next novel and how you don't know how to get outside of yourself, which is a big problem. And in this book, you got inside something else, and you got inside something really well, and you started before there was something to help you do it. How did that process, how did you do that?
Yeah, it's nice with AI. Like I'm really interested in sperm whales or other animals, and they're not using our language. So, though we're trying to understand their language, but so that's always tricky. Like, how do you describe their experience if they don't have access to our words? So what's nice about what I was interested in with AI is that even before ChatGPT, they were playing around with our words. They were training on our words, these large language models. So knowing that they'd have access to our language did make it easier. I read a lot of nonfiction, and I feel like there had been a lot of good AI nonfiction, Life 3.0 particularly, which kind of allowed me to imagine how an AI would see the world. I think it's also I've read a lot about the neurodiversity movement and autism and sensory disorders, and it seems similar to me in some ways where you go into a room, and I've heard this example used before, like my eyes might go towards the window, or if there's another person in the room, I'd go towards that. My eyes would go towards that. But with someone who is neurodiversity or even an AI, maybe everything is weighted equally, so instead of describing the person's face or expression, they might describe like what's on the floor, or the angle of the ceiling, or the paint color. Like that's all as important to creating their experience.
Right. I'm trying to think of what my granddaughter said. She was evaluated, and they would say something where the answer was supposed to be hot and cold, and she would go, no, they're both used in cooking. And it was completely wrong, but completely right at the same time.
Yeah, just a different way.
And my daughter, actually, last year was the first time I heard the word neurodiversity. And she said that because she's in a really excellent program where she just got her bachelor's degree and she's getting her master's in higher education policy and student affairs, bragging about her. But she said that I was neurotypical. And I got really upset. I don't want to be neurotypical. Why would I want to be normal?
Oh, that's great. I love that that neurodiversity does sound cool, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Why would I want to be neurotypical? It would really, well, the only reason to be neurotypical would be ignorance is bliss. I would much rather, although it's a pain in the butt, be sadder but wiser. You know? Because otherwise you could be really happy, but what would be the point?
Sure.
Okay, I'll move on. One of the comments that I got from one of my interviews was, why doesn't the interviewer just interview himself? And I wrote back, yes, an excellent idea.
Wow.
Or the author doesn't seem very interested in the interviewer's questions.
Oh my, that was wow. That seems a little judgy. I love interviews where my favorite interviews are ones that are conversations and not just me having to answer one sentence questions,
Yeah.
I think they're richer conversations.
Like being on Good Morning America or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of ghosts. Well, there are some ghosts, and we talked about, you briefly brought up mothers. So how did the whole idea of ghosts come about? Because it's not something that's generally in this type of literature, and yet you paint them so realistically, especially at the end of the book when there's a different relationship between who was the storyteller. And the storyteller's not really happy about these ghosts appearing. And they have these magic different ways of fighting back and forth. So how did the ghost become so real to you and to everybody in the book?
I really am interested in ghosts. They tend to, hopefully one of the next novels I'm working on is about ghosts. So I've read a lot about, I have some like old 1960s case studies on ghosts that I'm reading, and I'm fascinated in it. Not because I see ghosts, but I just really like the idea of them. And I'm interested that so many people have experienced them, and somehow whatever that experience means. So also it feels like if all of humanity is going extinct, there should be ghosts. There should be some remnant of us, whatever that is. If haunting was a thing, then, and this is the time, like, we should be haunted, or the planet should be haunted. So
Kind of almost gives you a safety net. The way you portrayed it, it kind of gives you a little bit of a safety net, because you don't think they're real, but they certainly are real, which gives you more of a chance of existing afterwards.
yeah. And I liked the idea that one of the moms, it helps her at least justify what she does by thinking that she's going to come back and haunt Sen.
Yeah, at least in the circular, well, it's not circular, but at least that theme comes up over and over again. And the repetition, it's almost like what they did at the Democrat, what Michelle Obama always does. What is that thing when you talk to people and then they repeat back to you in a speech? I forgot what it's called.
Call and response, maybe? Call and
Yeah. Call and response. She always does that. And it's very effective. You know, and all the reviews go, well, and then the eye falls in love with Sen, you know, and well, yeah, okay. But it was really interesting because foreshadowing, which he also mentions, maybe I shouldn't be talking about foreshadowing so early on. But then you have things that are said like, I don't have time or storage space. Well, they do. There is time and storage space. I wonder why that was said. And then I wish I could breathe. And I'm thinking, okay, where is this going? I mean, this is the first time that somebody who shouldn't say that says that. And then that was, to me, that was like the very beginning of breaking the ice.
Yeah, I was hoping that would be a turning point, kind of, for
yeah, it really was. I mean, it's not like I'm saying these things are deus machina. I'm just saying these things are really cool because either you catch them right away, or in retrospect, you flip back figuratively. What you do is you go to the magnifying glass and go, when was this said? Which is also a great help. But yeah, that was really great because I said, okay, this is going to a different place. So, and the other thing you do is there's lots of lists, like rubber bands, soup cans, 12 inches of ribbon. And the lists sometimes are paragraphs long. And at first I thought, why is she doing that? And then I realized it's really interesting to make a catalog of given situations because it fleshes out what's actually happening. Because I can look around and do exactly the same thing now. I can write exactly what you said. There's a statue of Don Quixote. There's a picture of my grandfather. There's two griffins. There's Ulysses. There's a painting of apples. There's my desk lamp. You know, it means something.
Yeah. And I'm fascinated in how sometimes there's I don't think I actually included this in the book, but at one point I had a list that told the entire relationship of Ellis and Sen at the end. I think it was a lot longer, but I kind of loved the idea that an AI who does probably think in list form would be able to tell a narrative, like how much we could push the list form to tell narratives. I guess there's also the timeline in the book where it does kind of tell the history of how we got to where we are in the book, you know, going from a human extinction to here backwards.
Yeah. It's almost a flavor to me. I don't know what that really means, but when you put all the items together, they're just things. Then when you put them all together, it's more than a thing. It's a kind of poem.
Yeah, I used to be a poet, so maybe that's where I really like lists. So like ghosts, I put lists in a lot of stuff, but having an AI narrator really allowed me to lean into that, which was fun.
I had a blackboard in my kitchen in my old house, so I would always write down the grocery list and then make up things that didn't exist. They were groceries that I was supposed to get. Like there's words that you make up in there in a list.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah.
And then so Google Photos came up with something yesterday. It always gives me that check mark, and I don't like check marks on my screen. So I have to go to them and eliminate them. I hate seeing check marks because it means I haven't looked at something that theoretically I'm
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So, and it says similar things, and it showed all the blackboards I had done over the years.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, I know, milk and cream and butter, and then like dog heads or creamed apples, or something really strange, but I can't think of some good ones now. But
And see,
yes,
that tells a story, right? Like looking at what you used to put on the blackboard versus what you would now, or
yeah, and I wish I still had that blackboard.
Hmm.
But in the old days when I lived in this farmhouse, and the blackboard belonged there with the chalk and with the eraser.
Oh, it sounds nice.
Yeah, and then my daughter would come up and erase everything and draw this really cool picture with beautiful colors, and then I couldn't use the blackboard anymore because she had created a work of art on it.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So you list all these books, and again, in the beginning, it says one of the first notes, how many terabytes were used and how many books were read. But one of the ones that really got to me was House of Leaves. Because you look at a house that's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside and stuff like that. And then I thought it was very like, in a different way, but very like your book.
Yeah. I thought it was yeah, there's similarities in terms of like the variety of sources. Also, I think House of Leaves is one of the scariest books I've ever read, and it's hard for me to get scared. But I also liked thinking if I was only able to bring one or two books with me, I feel like House of Leaves is something I'd just be able to read a lot, like reread a lot, and still get something rich out of it. So I put it in there for a variety of reasons. I think at first I might have picked some older books, from the 1800s, maybe Middlemarch, because I love Middlemarch. But my editor had mentioned, like, why don't you, that's probably pick something from here that'll be considered a classic in 100 years from now.
Well, you did. It was good that you put Turn of the Screw in when you were talking about ghosts.
Yeah, that is.
Oh, well, that scared me, that book.
Yeah. Yes, I listened to a lot of audiobooks, and that one had a particularly good
narrator.
Yeah.
I can't do it if it's a bad narrator. I can't listen to audiobooks while I'm driving because I pass my exit every single time.
Oh, I'm sure you get so absorbed. Yeah.
I also like the warning. This was the best warning from Emily. Switch to third person immediately. Like, that was very important, especially at the beginning, that you can't do this. You're not doing your job properly.
Those are really fun to write, those errors.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I felt like this was just a real big office, because you do divide it into storage and maintenance and things like that. And it was just like a big office in a multinational corporation where there were people walking around and handing things to people. They all kind of had names and they all had purposes. And eventually I began to anthropomorphize them and give them personalities. Did you feel that way? Did you intend it?
I guess Emily does have a human-ish name. And there's also Jenny's mentioned too, is kind of like that's also a human name. So I mean, when I'm talking to ChatGPT, it's hard not to feel like you're talking, especially now that you're talking to another similar entity, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, anthropomorphizing, I think it's just natural. We do that with everything, right? Like with animals.
The reason why it's much easier to do it now with ChatGPT is because the latency is much less. So it used to be, 7 or 8 seconds before a response, and now it's conversational. And when 5.0 comes out and Sora, who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, I've seen some amazing
Yeah.
videos of that.
And that's the reason why Sam Altman and Elon Musk say it's going to destroy the world is because they're right. And they're doing it themselves. And it's interesting that Sam Altman just, this is going to destroy everything.
And we're letting it out into the I have a friend who's who has like pre-access to Sora. She's a musician and video artist, and she does have some really beautiful views on accessibility and these tools and how it'll allow, like I feel that way with Midjourney or with the image generation AIs, that the stuff my kids and I have been able to create visually, like I don't have those skills, but it does feel like collaboration. We're able to create these kind of personal dreamlike scapes that we wouldn't be able to before. But
well, it's like what
for other reasons too.
Like with Dolly, and I'll say, draw me a photorealistic picture of an old man who sells books behind the counter with a green shade. And it does this beautiful thing that I would normally have paid a graphic artist thousands of dollars and would have taken me 4 weeks. And it took 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And then I'm old, so I say girls. Some of the girls that work for me, because they're 16 or 17, they want to be artists. And I keep warning them, embrace this, because if you don't embrace this, you're going to be left behind. And they don't agree. Excuse me.
Like, collaboration seems like a good approach for it, I think, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought, did you do this? I always thought I'm always going to be riding the crest of this technological wave. I'll never be left behind. That's going to be something and now I'm like so far left behind.
I know. Well, you're doing a lot more AI stuff than a lot of people, which I think is cool. I think some people are too nervous to experiment or to dive into it.
Yeah, my coworker, who's really smart, he's exactly my age. And I keep telling him about it. He goes, I will never use that. I won't use that. He thinks it's obscene. And I'm saying, no, just try. No, I refuse to try it. And it's this, he says, I'm not a Luddite. Well, I said, well, yeah, you are. You're like using candles instead of light bulbs.
Yeah, at this point, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and the ones who refuse to admit it are living in this world that's going to, or already has, left them behind. And okay, back to the book. We're trying to sell the book. So Minor Marissa, it's like 3 pages. And then she says, Sense, are you real? And then I could ask the same question of you right now. Because if you've listened to my interviews, I try to talk to these scientists about solipsism, and they refuse to acknowledge the possibility that it exists because they can't disprove it. But if it does exist, only one of us is here, and it screws up all their theories.
Yeah.
Because string theory is, you can't disprove string theory. Solipsism is no different. And solipsism can get you really depressed.
Yeah, I imagine with these chats that Sen is doing, it's hard to tell. Like, is the AI trying to create these entities for Sen to chat with to make her feel better, or the actual people? I don't think she'd be able to tell. We can't. Yeah, how do you tell?
There's no way. It's like, it used to be the Turing test and that first ELIZA or whatever it was, and kind of worked. But now the only reason it wouldn't pass the Turing test is because the person you're talking to is way too smart.
Yeah. Or tries too hard to seem human, maybe. Or yeah,
but just like your iterations, there's going to be continuing iterations, and each one's going to get better by a factor of
Yeah,
10.
totally. Yeah.
So what? So are you scared by that?
No. I have been, that surprised some people. When, especially with the role of AI in this, in my book, but I think there's a lot of things to be scared of. And so, you know, you kind of have to choose. And I think AI, I'm curious about it. And I am more scared about how we didn't address climate change in the past when we could have, you know, so like past fear or past frustration. But I don't know, AI doesn't, I think that's rare for writers. A lot of my writer friends are, the AI makes them really nervous. And I know some people were upset about how the AIs were trained, the large language models, but that just isn't my emotion. I'm kind of still in awe and have wonder at, you know, and I think AI too is being used ways I don't even understand, but for like to figure out individual cancer vaccines or learn more about DNA or map out DNA. And I think AI is doing a lot of good too.
Yeah, and you make no bones in your interviews and talks about the fact that you use it, which is just, you know, honest. You're not relying on it. You just, other people won't say that because for some reason it doesn't sound right. But yeah, it's just like using any tool. It's just using the dictionary. It's no different.
Yeah. Yeah, I just got through copy editing. I have a story collection coming out next year. And for copy editing, I find it really useful to ask, I care a lot about commas and word choice. So asking like, tell me the difference between the sentence with the comma and the sentence without, or if I want to use a kind of unusual word and I'm not sure I'm using it correctly or that the meaning's going to get across, I could ask like, tell me what you think this sentence means. And I found it a great tool for that.
Yeah, it's like if you had I don't know. It's just like you had a good smart friend sitting next to you and you wanted to do your job, but you just turned to him, hey, Frank, is this right? It's
Who has
not
nothing else to do, right? Who's always available. So
exactly.
yeah.
He's always there.
Yeah.
It's funny when you're talking about climate change. So again, I had a conversation this morning. I said, compare, tell me what the carbon emissions are for Taylor Swift to fly her private jet to one of her Eras Tour concerts, and compare that to how long a person would have to recycle in order to offset that carbon emission. So one person recycling, it would take them 3,000 years.
Oh my gosh.
3,000 years to eliminate the carbon emissions by one jet plane. And I said, and also include if she flies back to see Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, I've done it. I put in a couple of Travis Kelce ones. And and then of course you add all the people driving to a concert and back again and setting up the concert itself and the instruments and electricity being used. And so I don't recycle. What's the point? I'm not going to think globally and act locally. To me, that makes no sense. I mean, I can't stop China from polluting. I can't stop India from polluting. And if I have to work 3,000 years to offset one jet flight, and you know what ChatGPT said the reason I do it?
What?
Empowerment, self-empowerment.
Yeah, it's just to make it feel like you have something to do maybe, or
That I'm making a difference.
yeah. Yeah, there's been a shift, I feel like back, 10 years ago, before I was writing this book, I feel like we did seriously think that individual choice, actually, I feel like the reports came out that the oil companies were pushing this, the idea of a carbon footprint, personal carbon footprint, because we were being told that our individual choices could determine how severe climate change would be in the future, right? So like I started making my own yogurt so I didn't have to use the plastic containers or buying milk in glass jars, or they were trying to push individual responsibility or responsibility onto us. So, but I think lately it feels like people are realizing that's not going to cut it. That's not going to. I still like riding my bike as much as I can, and hang drying my laundry if I can. But I do realize that's not going to solve.
But they are nice things to do, especially on a day like today. Drying your clothes outside, it's great because they
It's a lot
smell.
more pleasant than being in my basement. Yeah, yeah.
It's funny because Elon Musk said, we're not going to do anything. Let's just use up all the fossil fuels and then we'll have to do it. He says, just run through them and then we'll have to do it.
Wow.
Which, as whatever you want to call them, oh, yeah, I'm going off again, but okay, what do you think? So, being a speculative fiction writer, being kind of like a scientist. So, Elon Musk has Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, Starlink. He basically controls the entire world. And Twitter, which, if you hate Elon Musk, you are still on Twitter. The Pope is on Twitter. The president's on Twitter. Everyone's on Twitter, but they hate Elon Musk. It's the same kind of thing. And the most nomen-like thing is that Elon Musk is going to have to save the Boeing Starliner astronauts. It's like everything falls into place for him. So what do you think as a science fiction writer about the fact that he's brought science fiction into the present? He's going to go to Mars.
Yeah. I remember a few years ago, I was super excited because there was supposed to be a Mars mission, and they were taking individual people. I think like 20,000 people applied. I don't know if you remember that, to go to Mars. And I followed that really closely. It never happened. It was supposed to be a reality TV show. So I'm not sure. I'm not sold on, if it's actually going to happen. But it's a lot of resources to use up to get us to, yeah.
But you're a writer who longs for us to be on Mars. And also it's like what he's done is what Ray Bradbury and Robert Heinlein and Theodore Sturgeon wrote about. Isn't that what's supposed to happen?
Yeah, I was just thinking of Ray Bradbury too, how much I love those stories. And if
So
I love the stories,
when I read your book, I was thinking of The Sound of Thunder for some reason. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah. He's held up. He's one of the writers who I've read, every single decade of my life. And I feel like that's so special to still love him as much as I did before.
Well, think about like Something Wicked This Way Comes and being scared, especially as a kid, or Dandelion Wine. And those are both books kind of like you would write because they really aren't hard science fiction at all. In fact, they're not science fiction. They're just good books that create a sense of wonder in you.
Yeah. He called himself a fabulist, which I thought was such a good word. Or maybe someone else called him a fabulist, but it seemed like such a great framework for him because I'm not super, though I did a lot of research for this book. I'm not super interested in the technical aspects of this stuff. I'm talking about, though AI is fascinating, but I really wanted to get into the more realism, just what's happening on the outside.
Wouldn't it be interesting as a thought experiment, I guess? So I don't know, it seems like it should be if your book has been optioned for a movie or a TV series or Netflix, but it ought to be. And I thought at first when I was thinking about that, I was thinking it's not really a cinematic book. And then I thought about it again, and it really is a cinematic book. Like a Jennifer Lawrence when she was younger book, Living in the Cabin,
Oh yeah. And then the afterworld stuff could be whatever. That could really be whatever someone imagines. No, it hasn't been optioned yet, so
it will be. And like I was saying to an author the other day, when it is, and then I try to interview you again for your next book, you're going to say, oh no, I'm too busy. Or your publicist is going to call me and say, no, she's only got 15 minutes. And that's what happened with Hillary. I mean, with Emily.
Oh, really?
But she became a big shot. Not that she did, but the publicists begin to rein you in because there's so much you have to do.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, especially when you get a movie. That's what happened to the guy who wrote The Martian. first time, and even with Artemis, but after that, no.
Did you interview him? Have you?
I interviewed him for that
Oh, you did.
Artemis,
That's cool.
and I interviewed him for the last one that's supposed to be a movie with Ryan Gosling.
Oh, okay.
It's like, what was that one called? What's it called? I don't remember. It's like some kind of moonshot kind of thing. Anyway, yeah. But yeah, it's so nice to be able to interview people who, I just feel so privileged to be able to do this. Because, when I love your book and I think, wow, she's going to talk to me. It's like, so cool.
Yeah, no, I love that you do this series. I think it's such a gift for writers too. So thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we've covered a lot, or at least I've bothered you a lot. So, what else? So what do you, oh yeah, you did talk about, because that's another Terry Gross question. So what are you working on now? So, like you did talk about your next novel and how you had a problem thinking about, as I said, alluded to earlier, sometimes it's hard to step outside, and you have to, it is impossible for you to step outside. So how do you do that? How do you become the alien who's observing us?
Yeah. Especially if the book's using language, and
Right.
it's not like you want to force a non-human entity to, like a sperm whale I don't want to have the sperm whale have to use English in order for us to understand it. Yeah, I'm still, that idea is going to stay in the back of my head. My next novel, I think, is going to be a little easier to write, and I'm hoping we're making progress, not we, but like society, scientists are making progress in figuring out sperm whale language. So, in a year or two, we probably will understand it a lot more. So I'm excited to stay plugged in on that. And interspecies communication, I think, is more of a thing now. I kind of observe from the edges of what all these scientists are doing, but
yeah, all the books that Cy Montgomery has written about octopuses.
yes.
I could never eat octopus sushi again. It's impossible.
Oh, I know. I was listening to the Soul of the Octopus, I think it's
Yeah.
called, with my daughter, and we were just gasping at all the things that the octopus could do. And then they have such short lifespans, though, which sounds really hard.
Yeah, and Cy Montgomery was holding the tentacle of one as it was dying.
Oh gosh, wow.
And made this connection. She came to our bookshop. She was really nice.
That was a great interview. That's one of the ones that I watched from a couple of months ago, maybe.
I don't know. I can't do that anymore. I have no concept of time. It's interesting. I've always thought, obviously, whales and dolphins are smarter than us because they can't manipulate the environment like we can. They don't even have anything close to an opposable thumb. So all they can do is think. All they can do is think.
Yeah.
They can't make stuff. So they just think.
Though one of I can't remember which species, but they made like a net of bubbles in order to catch fish. So it's not making like, I think it's making something, actually. That's pretty cool to do that.
And they probably already have their own, if I'm right, their AI is themselves, because you don't actually have to accumulate hard information to have this incredible consciousness that allows you to connect with everything. And that's why an AI would say, let's get rid of us, because then Gaia is just like in an Avatar, the world is the being, the living being.
Yeah. It's fascinating.
Anyway, so yeah, I love the book. It just entranced me. It was a totally different kind of book, and that's what you write. And the short stories that you write are, and I love short stories. I guess you love the short story format.
I love short stories. I like essays too. I love I really do.
Oh yeah, so like with Ray Bradbury in the October Country or something like that, those stories, those they all hit home. Especially the one about his favorite dog that died and got buried, and then he hears something climbing up the stairs, and it's his dog, but it's not a good dog.
Pet Cemetery.
Yeah. Stephen King used to be like, I'm not going to read Stephen King. It was like, listening to Billy Joel, which I or David Sanborn, or the guy who plays the clarinet. Yeah, but now he's like a classic author, and he wrote an excellent book on how to write too.
Yes. Yeah. I grew up on Stephen King. I really I want to read Pet Sematary again, because that comes up with a lot of the haunting ghost books that I've read about when the land's haunted.
My favorite is The Stand by far.
Yes, that's epic. That's so immersive. Yeah, that's a fun one.
Yeah, it's so good that you like so much literature, like mentioning Margaret Atwood and Ursula Le Guin, which must have been, I mean, she was great. And she created worlds.
Yeah.
Just like Frank Herbert did, you know.
And she didn't love genre designations, which I admire about her too. She thought they were silly. She seemed like a really good advocate for writers too. Yeah, she was cool.
Yeah, I know. Like with Octavia, and you mentioned Octavia Butler too. With her and with some other authors, I feel like I'm doing something wrong by placing her in a genre in the bookshop. But don't place her in a genre, then where do I put her?
That's interesting. Yeah. I thought, I wondered sometimes if bookstores could be organized. They probably can't, but like by
Color.
color or something. Yeah, to force people outside of their comfort genre. But
Well, my favorite thing about the bookstore, because I have library ladders, which is like, I always wanted library ladders. I have one here.
oh, that's nice. That's cool.
And so like a kid climbs up the library ladder to get a book that he wants. But unlike recommendations from Amazon, he will see the book on either side. That book might change his life. So it's like, that's my favorite thing.
That's the best thing. It is. Yeah.
And I have the luxury too of like a 12-year-old kid came in and he brought to the front War and Peace. And I couldn't charge him for it, you know?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
how could you charge him for doing that?
Good for him. Wow.
Yeah. Cool. And he'll remember that too. I mean,
yeah, totally.
That's not why I did it, but he will remember it. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Sorry if I did most of the talking. I tend to do that, but
no, it's great conversation. So.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah.
And I look forward to whatever you do next. And like I said, I do love the short stories, but I certainly look forward to the novel. It sounds like it's a thorny problem for you, which is probably a good thing.
Yeah. I'm not a fast writer to begin with, so I'm taking my time, but I think something good will come out of it. So
yeah, if you wrote this one before ChatGPT, think of what you'll be writing before whatever comes.
Yeah, good point.
Okay, well, thanks again. I hope to talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye, thanks.